And here we go. So it is another video on the basis of our single machine development and test environment backed by Podman on Windows. So as a quick reminder, we have a barebone development environment running on this database, and we have cloned the database to get a test database, and we set up a container-based Siebel environment, 3 machines, which is already running, which has a migration application deployed on the test database. But this test database is a copy of a dev database, so it's essentially the same, but we want to establish a full migration capability in terms of incremental migration and to be able to demonstrate, train people on this. And we only have a single machine running, so of course that's very cost effective. And this is not a scenario, of course, for production environments. But it's a fun experiment, and yeah, I'm glad that you're still along until this video. So what we're doing now is we are going to run a full RR import. In the previous video, we have run a full RR export. So the result of this is this 100 meg zip file with the full runtime repository, mandatory repository, application workspace, that is LOV data, and schema information. And this is the zip file I'm going to feed into the migration plan that we've created on the test environment. So here's the migration application running on the test environment. So we have a test connection, we have a migration plan that runs the necessary services. We set this up in the last video. And now we're going to execute this. And it asks, first thing it asks for the file name, and it will look it up in that folder, hopefully. So we'll just prove it. And since it's a target environment, we have to provide the schema owner password for the schema services. Let's see if we get that right. And let's hit OK and see where this takes us. So I'm monitoring a little bit on the Siebel server side on the test environment, and as you can see, the DDL imp process just came into play, hitting the CPU hard. And DDL imp is, well, that's the step. If we expand this, that's the step to import the schema, and it's doing that right now. So our plan works, yes. And once it gets to the repository import, if you recall, or you can get to siebelhub.com to get some really good migration training, the migration application, the full import of a runtime repository always produces a second repository called migrated repository, and we need to find a way to rename that and then remove the old one. So stay tuned. So for now, we just let this rip and heat up the environment, and I'll pause the video until, well, the next exciting step is coming up. All right, time to check, and, well, execution has completed. That was a long one. That's not unexpected, of course, for things like this. Well, long is relative. It was like 40, well, not even 40 minutes. And so what do we have now? We have a successful full RR import. So if you look at these log files, especially the runtime repository service, you see that the repository import-export utility is kicked off by the business service, which is an interesting fact. It's a business service kicks off a command line utility, and you can clearly see the name of that imported repository is migrated repository. So if you were to log into this environment using any Siebel application, it would actually not be loading this repository because that's not the Siebel repository. As a matter of fact, we have 2 repositories in that database. Yeah, don't believe it? Let's check it out. So let's just, we can stay right here on the server console. Just cancel that. And we do the SQL plus. And we do if anybody knows how to make that constant, I'll be happy, grateful for replies. So here we go with a select name from S repository, and we have to see here. So one has to go, and which one has to go? Well, definitely not the one we just painstakingly imported. This one has to go, but a Siebel database needs a Siebel repository. So we have to rename them first and then delete the, well, renamed Siebel repository. Let's rename it to old or shoot me or whatever. So, and that one we rename to Siebel repository. How do you rename it? No, don't even think. You don't rename it using SQL. You actually rename it using Siebel CLI. What's that? Okay, let's check it out. So we are on the Siebel server, and we go to the Siebel server directory where we can actually source the Sieb-env sh. It's still feeling funny. I have Linux on Windows but not Windows and Linux. I don't know. Sorry, I'm just babbling. So this is sourcing the environment variables, typical Linux job, before you run any binary. And then you have in the bin folder, you have sieb-dev CLI. If you just run this, it will give you, okay, you have to give me a little bit more, and it looks suspiciously like Siebel tools, doesn't it? Reads a config file, username, password, data source. Okay, but dang, what config file? So let's check out some of the config files. So we go to the ENU folder, and let's do an lscfg. Oh, yeah, there is the Siebel config file, maximum config files. So they're all not used, by the way, in modern Siebel, except the EAI CFG, which is still used by the object manager. And the Siebel CFG is used occasionally. So let's check out the Siebel CFG. And see if it has correct settings, because it looks like it does. Correct settings I'm looking for is especially the client root directory and temp directory. That's pointing correctly. So if you look for a CFG file that's suitable for siebdev CLI, that's a good candidate. However, that data source must be a server data source. So let's just get down a little bit and see if it has the server data source. Local SE is useless, but we have a server data source. Yeah, that looks good. That's our free PDB1 right there. So not too bad. The Siebel CFG is really good. But I don't want to spoil it here. I don't want to mess with it. I'm quite sure that local SE is not going anywhere, but let's just quit out of here. And let's copy it. So we run a copy Siebel CFG to siebdev CLI, siebdev CLI CFG, and we can. So now we can do the edit. Sorry, I have to go to the ENU. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, so we are looking at an already edited file. And the things you need to watch out for is the data source. Make that the server data source. The client root directory pointing to your Sieb server, and the temp directory pointing to your Sieb server temp. And then the next thing is that I always set, I'm not sure it's necessary, the server db odbc data source typically is your enterprise name underscore dsn. And then make sure, if you use a copy of the Siebel CFG like on this system, your server data source, server data src, has the correct connect string, table owner, DLL, SQL style for Oracle or for any other database, of course. So that's the minimum. I think the rest is pretty much ignored. So again, if you might have an existing CFG file that works for you, or you might just go from the Siebel CFG if that has the settings. Okay, so we are good. And you can now go and test it. So for testing, you just run siebdev CLI from the Sieb server bin with that CFG file you created or you obtained from somewhere, and you just want to test if it connects. So you give it the data source, the username, and the password, and it would be just like Siebel Tools. It would behave like Siebel Tools. It starts up and does nothing. It then times out. So you would see not an error message, like if you have anything wrong in that file, it would be an error message. If everything is right, then we just, well, wait on the console for up to several minutes sometimes. You can see the CPU going up here. It's of course rubbish CPU, but it's using a lot of CPU, so that's like it's spinning up. And like Siebel Tools takes a while and gets its bearings and does some database queries probably, and it does nothing. Like you open Siebel Tools, but it's virtual, it's headless, right? So you just have to wait for this to come back. If it would have been an error, it would have been displayed already and exited. But this is looking very good. So let's just wait until it's finished. It will come back with a message. So when it comes back, and I had to be quite patient here, but it comes back with please wait a few seconds for this utility to finish, which is of course funny, was a few minutes, but it winds down. So this is correct. This is a correct connection. So now we can run the actual command to rename the repositories. That's why we're here for. And let's do the actual command. So let's repeat that and add to it. Got that in my clipboard. From the Siebel bookshelf, of course, or from our Siebel Hub training. Go to siebelhub.com, find the migration training. Switch repository is the command for modern Siebel. There have been other commands. Don't use them on modern Siebel. That is 25 or something. SR current is the current repository, so the Siebel repository. And SR new is the migrated repository, and the current will be renamed. Well, actually, the migrated will be renamed to Siebel repository, and Siebel repository will be renamed to old Siebel repository. And if you run this, like I'm doing now, it will also tell you that it's doing some other things besides renaming. So of course it will spin up and take a few moments, but it will have some output. And we are back, not after a few seconds, of course, but we can see that it has executed actually the runtime, Siebel runtime metadata publisher service, migrate long-running workflows, migrate past tasks. That's very interesting, right? And finished that and executed some other stuff for the renaming, actually. So this is why it's super important not to use anything illegal, direct SQL against the database that is other than select is totally illicit. So what happened to our database? let's find out. So we can do the select name from S repository. There's still two, but the X Siebel repository is now old Siebel repository and the new one. So now it would be okay to restart your environment, and it would load this repository. But this has to be gone. This has to be removed. So how do you remove it? No, you don't delete this record from the table. You have to remove all of it, right? All of it has to be removed. And that includes the everything workspace managed, like list of values, you know, there's a workspace ID, stuff like that. So yeah, how do you get rid of it? Again, it's a utility. You can learn about it in Bookshelf and in our great Siebel migration course on siebelhub.com. And it's this utility, RR cleanup, and has a few parameters. So if you want to learn about these parameters, run it without parameters. Definitely, here's the name of the repository to clean up, to remove. And then we have our ODBC data source, and we have a type. B minus BB means actually both. Remove both the design repository and runtime repository. That's important because we have a design repository in here from the clone of the development database. Okay, so let's run this. And it's off, and it's prepared a delete statement, and it's executing a delete statement. So the database will go crazy with this, definitely. And we just have to wait until this is finished. This will take significantly long because the database has to do, you know, recursive deletes for millions of records. Yes, that's what happens right now. So we are going to pause the video until this is complete. So after quite some time, the process seems to have finished. So I can't find any traces of it on the Siebel server anymore. Let's just do a grep. Oh, that's done, I guess. So the top C doesn't show anything. No. And the database itself is still a little bit busy, so let's just wait a little bit more until we can be sure that it's done. Okay, so now I'm quite sure it's finished, so we can see only the Siebel repository on this machine, on this database. And there's one more command we need to run. It's recommendable, so Bookshelf isn't quite clear, but there's another command with a switch A, Y, so yes. And running it with that switch removes any, according to documentation, orphan records that might not have been reached in the first sweep or so. So let's just run this. And this should run much faster, just maybe a minute or so. And then we are done with the migration, and we can restart the environment. Okay, it's done. And let me get out of here. And restarting the environment means that we just restart the containers. So I have, let me stop the Siebel server. I have already manually stopped the Siebel server on this before I started the renaming. And also stop for good measure the other two containers. So you can also see how fast this is, and of course this could be automated to a high degree. So now we start the gateway first. And let's just monitor a little bit how quickly it comes up. So once you see that sleep infinity, it's basically has done its startup script. And of course, there are some processes that are firing up, but give it, let's say, 20, 30 seconds and it's up. So now the Siebel server will take a little bit long, of course, but we want to validate that it finds the Siebel repository and it is now a real runtime repository, which we can prove by pulling a watermark. And maybe if we are really frisky, we can do a incremental migration. That would actually be a bit of fun. So let's do it. I'll start the AI as well. And while the test environment is starting, so I'll go to Siebel Web Tools, of course on the development environment, which is still running. So feels really fun on working on two enterprises on the same machine, something you don't want to do in real life, but feels like a cloud almost. Well, it is in the cloud, but okay, let's not go there. So we have to do for incremental change, we have to change something. So I'm going to create a quick workspace, a developer workspace that is test incremental repository. And of course, we need to make at least one tiny little change. We're not going to kind of, you know, reinvent data archival or something. I'll just go with a business service that I know. Eliza, the very first AI. And I just changed the comments. So say Alex was here. And that's it. That's a change. Okay, so we have something we can deliver. And of course, you've all been there. So we version that. And we submit that. And we deliver that. Oh, shouldn't take too long. And so we have a change that can be found, identified by the incremental repository migration, which we will run next once the test environment is up. So I'm pausing the video recording now. So the test environment should be up by now. We are logging into the test environments migration application. That will just verify that it's up. Yep, okay. So we see at least the REST API is up, which is good enough for now. And yeah, the thing with the watermarks, of course, is explained in great detail in our great migration course on siebelhub.com. You can get an RR environments watermark by REST call or clicking on these three mustaches, the three musketeers. No, of course not. And that is going to be the test watermark from this date. I always like to put in a date and timestamp. So that is 1425 on this machine. Okay, so that will kick off the watermark creation. The watermark will give us the information, what is the current state of this application. So let's go to, okay, it's already done. It has been written to the migration folder, which we have shared with the development environment. Let's quickly go to the call center app on the dev system. Just do a folder here. Okay, so we capture some of these favorites and let's log in. Okay, so we can go to the workspace dashboard, and as we can see, there's no way of creating, deleting workspaces. A very good indicator that this is an RR environment, no DR, no workspaces to be created, and there is one workspace, main, and it has version 0. Now, of course, you would imagine it's clear that it's version 0, we just migrated it over. But this one, version 0, originates from main version 0 on dev. So, for example, if dev would be now on version 16, the next version here that we migrate would be 1. So that's an incremental repository merge. And so we can't do anything manual here. We have to develop something in dev and then migrate it over. And this is exactly what we're going to test. Now with the watermark being complete, and its watermark being here, I can go to the dev environment and create a migration plan first for the incremental RR export. And that uses different services. It uses the incremental runtime repository data service, also the schema service, which is inherently incremental as it only identifies the delta, and we do the incremental workspace data service for LOVs if there would have been any changes there. So we save that export plan, and now we can do the incremental export, and now it asks us for the watermark and also for the package file name, and the package file name I just rename to incrr. And if we click Get Workspace Details, it reads from the watermark, okay, main 0 was the last thing we migrated, so main 1 is the next thing you can migrate. And it would be the highest version, you could go lower. Of course, we have only main 1 now, so this is slightly confusing because it's like 1-to-1, but it could say here main 199, and it would still become version 1 after migration. So now we are going to witness the first incremental export, and it is pretty fast, so there's no schema changes. There is a little bit of repository stuff to export, so it will just take a few minutes to export that, and it will just take a few minutes at most to import it. So on the target side, I can already prepare the plan to do the incrr import onto the test environment using the same services, and of course waiting for the dev environment to complete. Well, almost done, just a few more seconds. Yep, okay, history tells us was a success. So in the migration folder we now have that zip file. Those shared folders are really a charm. So now we can go to the test environment and execute the incremental import plan, giving the file name, the table owner password, because it's a required field, will not be used this time, and we run the import. With a synchronous incremental, you just save the time to literally make sure the zip file is available and run the imports. It will all run in one go. But that's a luxury we don't need here. And you can see it's already running. And we just do it in real time, wait for it to complete, as it will not take long, as you have seen. Okay, wow, this was fast. It was just half a minute or so. And it was successful. So now if we go to the workspaces and reload, we see main version 1, an incremental version, has been loaded. So we are now in a position, main 0 is still the version shown because we haven't logged in. So if we log in fresh, of course, or it even loads inside that session. But if you log out and log in, you definitely get the latest version. So you can always check help about repository, still on main, this session is still on main 0 because it hasn't switched yet. But still a great sign that this is working. So we now have 2 Siebel environments, 1 development DR design repository and 1 test RR runtime repository environment. We have a full running CI/CD pipeline, incremental pipeline between the 2 of them. So this is an ideal state for any demonstration environment or training environment. So should you take Siebel Hub training in the near future, we will use this environment to get even better education on Siebel CRM out to you. So thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one. There's always something fun to do. Bye-bye.